Alright, today we're going to be jumping back into the Bitcoin price action, looking at where we are in this cycle compared to previous ones and why I am so extremely bullish on Bitcoin right now. I think we still have the most violent part of the parabola ahead of us. I think this last drop really scared a lot of weak hands out of the market. It was a pretty nice shakeout. Now it's time for the disbelief rally to continue and for Bitcoin to push up to six figures sooner than most realize. So let's go ahead, let's get into why I think history is going to repeat, and we are about to hit the top half of the Bitcoin parabola where prices go absolutely ballistic. So as you can see here on the chart, I have two ranges pulled with the value area low of each of those ranges, right? So let me just mark this out for you. Right here, the current range we're in, and then back here, this is when the last ETF came out, back when we were still in the retracement levels for Bitcoin. And the reason I have marked out these two ranges is because this price action we are seeing now is extremely similar to what we had down when the first Grayscale ETF came out, and I believe history is going to repeat very locally here, and we are going to see price retest this value area low and do another parabola. So let's just look at this last range we had, right? This was back in January of this year. We traded sideways for quite a bit, deviated to the upside, deviated to the downside, got back above value area low, retested it as support, and then went parabolic soon after. You'll probably notice that this price action is very similar, right? Just minus the deviation to the upside. Now we are seeing if we are going to go ahead, get back above this level, test it as support, and that's where we do go on our next parabola. And I do expect this next wave for Bitcoin to be the last one of the cycle before the top comes in. I think it's going to be extremely violent, and I'll go ahead and visualize that for you guys with just some simple trends. And while I'm not like the biggest fan of trend lines as far as trading, I think it's a very retail thing to do to trade off of trend lines. They are very good at getting a grasp of where we are in the cycle regarding the angle of attack Bitcoin is currently taking. So what do I mean by angle of attack? Well, what I'm going to do is just take that trend from the low at $15,000, bringing it up to that range high at around $30,000 of the bear market. You can see it's a pretty average uptrend, right? Nothing too crazy. We can see this is our secondary angle of attack. Much steeper, right? This is what I would consider the start of the bull market, was from this low back in September, right? Around 24K. Let's go ahead, let's take it again from the most recent uptrend, taking that low to high. You can see that is our third angle of attack, much steeper. What is this? This is the definition of a parabola. You could say, well, do you think this is the end of the parabola, right? Is it going to get any steeper, or was that it? And while the case could be made that the top is already in and we're going to reject this value area low and head to the floor, I don't expect that to happen. Real quick, just looking at the S&P bullish. Go over here to a daily time frame on the S&P. We have gotten above the daily EMA, back to status support, looking to head up here. So I would expect this just to be the low in the next uptrend up, where we take a steeper angle of attack. And how high would that kind of get us if we were to just take a guess? And what we can do is we can look at previous cycles. Obviously, we're going to take into account diminishing returns here. What I'm going to go ahead and do is start at that COVID dip. We're going to take our first angle of attack, much steeper than now, obviously, right? Because we're coming out of like Black Swan event. Makes a lot of sense. The second angle of attack, though, was still even steeper than this. But if we go ahead, we continue this trend up, you can see this is our third angle of attack right there. Extremely steep, right? I do expect this is the correction we're seeing now. So I think the lower end, just comparing to last cycle, I do think we're in this range here. And we can see the last trend low to high, pretty much the exact same, right? We didn't actually go more parabolic in this last run. We kind of just mirrored this run once again. I do think that's a big possibility, so we'll keep that in mind. And then obviously you can see here we start decelerating, the curve gets weaker, and then we inevitably roll over. Could we see a very similar thing this time? Potentially. History never repeats identically, right? It always rhymes. So let's just take this into consideration. The trend was pretty much the same length as, previous ones. So if we were to just take a target on this guy, just pull in the same angle, right? If 2020 bull run was to repeat, this is where we would look at a high to come in right around that $100,000, which I think is probably the most likely outcome, right? We have a sweep through 100K to get everyone super bullish. They get the headlines of that $100,000 Bitcoin, but then we get back under it and they distribute before rolling over while everyone FOMOs into Bitcoin at $100,000, thinking we're going to $1 million. But just to give you guys another scenario that could play out, let's go ahead, let's look at that 2017 cycle, because I do think it looks very similar to what we're seeing now, and I'll get into that after drawing these, trends, angles of attack, and that sort of thing. There is something that was in the thumbnail of this video that looks very, very similar to 2017, so I'll get into that in just a second. But first things first, let's look at this beautiful parabola here that we had in 2017 from the bear market here. So you can see this is kind of first angle. We go ahead, draw second one from this low, second angle, keep on going here from this low to this high, third angle, and this is where I think Bitcoin would be when comparing to 2017, right in there. And if we were to just take that last angle of attack, this is where it gets interesting. And this is where it gets interesting, because if this is where we are in the cycle, we still have one more wave of uptrend before even hitting that max parabola. And while I don't think it's going to be this crazy, I do think it will be something in between the 2020 cycle and the 2017 cycle. And my reasoning for that is, if I were to just kind of remove my drill lines here, go to a weekly time frame, let's look at this bull market support band. This is that green and red line that comes up here, right? It's an estimated moving average. You can see in 2017 this was beautiful. We tested it 1, 2, almost 3, 4, 5, 6 times before finally leaving it going absolutely vertical. If we were to compare that to 2020, we only tested this thing one time before going vertical. What is our cycle doing right now? Well, like I said, it's somewhat in between. We tested it once, went vertical, but we have now pulled back, consolidated, and we did go ahead. We tested the bull market support band again. I haven't looked at the bull market support band in quite some time. I thought this was lower down. I didn't think we had actually tapped it, but yeah, no, we went ahead. We tapped the bull market support band, and it looks very similar to this tap right here when comparing to 2017. So if it's something in between, like a 2017 and 2020, this last angle of attack should actually be bigger than these other ones, and it could be like another blow off top scenario, especially with some recessionary indicators pointing towards a potential blow off top before a big crash that I do cover in a previous video called Are We in the Roaring 20s all over again? So make sure you go watch that if you haven't. That explains my thesis, like kind of on the whole markets in general, more in depth. But if we were to get that blow off top scenario, you could see this last uptrend taking us on a ride up to, 150,000. Looks pretty realistic. And I just thought of something I could do here. Since I think the top's going to come in the fall, right? Based on what I covered in that, like, Are We in the Roaring 20s video that I did. And then taking into consideration, we are going to have a much steeper angle continuing up. Let's say distribution starts in like September. So we'll go ahead, we'll take, mid-September as that first peak on Bitcoin here. Well, as you can see here, if we were to extend this out at 85 degrees for our last parabola, that just doesn't make any sense. So could it be actually more like 2017 where we keep testing the bull market support band more times, right? And it's not just full-on parabola yet like we did in 2020. Definitely could be. So let's just say we continue the length of these trends up a little bit, something like that maybe, maybe even a little bit lower there. Then we go ahead, test this bull market support band once again before going on that final angle of attack, which could be, another 85 degree trend. That would actually land us at like $320,000 Bitcoin by, September of 2024. So I would not expect this to happen, but just thought for fun I would throw it in here. This is theoretically possible, because if we look at our 2017 cycle, right, that was an 85 degree uptrend at the end there. We go ahead, take high to low here, like 78% uptrend, at the top. So, maybe that is unrealistic. Let's go ahead, let's bring this down to like 75 degrees, something like that. That's much more realistic. Okay, and that lands just right at $200,000, which I think that's actually a potential realistic price target if we are going to have like the .com bubble for crypto. $220,000 blow off top after testing the bull market support band one more time, which would get us out to around September. This is kind of like your best case scenario for this cycle. Again, what do I think is more probable? I think it's more probable our high does come in here, and it just takes a little bit more time to get up there, right? So instead of a 75 degree uptrend, we actually just mirror this again, have a like 50 degree uptrend, which lands us around, having the top in July. And then what will push us out to September is obviously just bigger kind of distribution in here, where you do see like a double top. You'll have a weekly bear div that comes in here. If we do just look at this, right, you could see something like this play out going into September, and we do top around that, like, I don't know, let's just call it $95,000 to $120,000, somewhere in there. But yeah, those are kind of the two scenarios I see for Bitcoin right now that are the most likely. Of course, anything is possible, but I think there is still a lot of bears in the market. There's a lot of people that already got shaken out down here. Normally, if the top were to come in, altcoins would have gone more parabolic, right? There would be more optimism in the market. The fact that people are not euphoric tells me the disbelief rally is more likely to continue, especially when looking at Total 3. I covered this in a previous video as well. The altcoin market looks identical to where we were back here in February of 2021. If you go to a daily time frame and look at this, it looks very, very similar, as well as we now have accepted back into the bull market range of last cycle for the altcoins. So if you know anything about when you backtest a value area low of a previous range, you are almost guaranteed to go ahead and hunt value area high of that range. So I would expect at the very least we get a nice 50% run over here on Total 3. So yeah, we are potentially warming up for wave 2 of altcoin season in here. But if we do go ahead and look at Bitcoin dominance, I also talked about this in a previous video, right? We have a macro trend going back to like 2017. We had broken below and I said, oh, we broke below. It's probably, something like this where we're just going to, start altcoin season. Well, we did actually end up getting back above. We do have 2 days left, so this could, just sweep back below it once again. But I think the weekly is probably going to close as a back test here, which means Bitcoin could rally against alts just a little bit here, maybe getting up into this fair value gap, something like that before finally rolling over. So it does look like Bitcoin might continue to rally against the alts here. And there are two cases to be made for this, right? One, we're just that early in the cycle that Bitcoin is going to continue a parabola while the altcoin season is still warming up and we don't go parabolic until Bitcoin finally tops out, similar to 2020. Or the latter, the bear case, maybe Bitcoin is actually topped and alts are going to continue to fall against Bitcoin going into the bear market. Nothing is ever a guarantee, but I think more likely than not, especially just looking at the Total 3 right here, this is telling you altcoins are going to have a massive rally here, and it is not the time to get bearish whatsoever. But yeah, all in all, everything is aligned on the charts really nicely to signal the next phase of this rally to go pretty vertical here. So yeah, I'm going to be wrapping up there. YouTube servers were down yesterday, so I had to upload at night. So if you did miss my last video, it was covering some altcoin gems, some layer 1 gems. Make sure to go ahead and check out that video, as well as go ahead and join my Discord. Links in the description down below. And with that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.